All right, I just want to take a minute to welcome everybody. My name is Honor Brown, and I am one of the photo editors here at Wonderful Machine, as well as a project manager. And we're really happy you're all here today. Some of you are maybe familiar with the member open house format. For some of you, this might be the first time. We see it as an opportunity to, connect with our member photographers around a topic of interest and really dig in kind of deeper into a conversation. It's a great opportunity to help build community as well, and something we've been doing for several months now. And today's topic is one that I'm really excited to talk about. It's self-assigned projects, which is something near and dear to my heart, as well as I know Greg, who's going to be our presenter today. We hear from clients all the time how much they enjoy seeing photographers' personal work that they've created, with their own strong point of view, their own creative vision. I know that when I was on the publishing side, when I was a photo editor at the New Yorker, it meant a lot to me to see a photographer's personal work. It was just a very direct way to engage with, their aesthetic and the topics that they care about. I think it can bring a lot of depth to your portfolio overall and just help you stand out in a very crowded field. So I think, it's just something that has a lot of importance for a lot of different reasons. Wonderful Machine has also recently added to our website unpublished section. If you go to the find section of our website, there's a drop-down menu down at the bottom, unpublished, which is an opportunity for members to share unpublished work, which we're currently promoting on our blog. And I'm going to introduce now Greg Jones, who's here with us today. Greg's going to be talking to you all about self-assigned projects. Greg is one of our photo editors. He's also a marketing specialist, in addition to being a very accomplished artist and educator. And he lives in New Jersey with his dog, Indiana, and his wife. And we're happy to have you. Thanks for being here, Greg.
Thank you, Honor. Hello, everybody. So we are going to be talking about self-assigned projects, which we at Wonderful Machine think is often a very crucial aspect of a photographer's practice, not only for the sense of fulfillment in pursuing the kind of work that's most meaningful to you, but also because, as Honor mentioned, we do hear often from clients that they really value the chance to see the kind of work that photographers make when they're not getting paid, because it's a chance to see what the photographer is most passionate about. And, I believe personally that photographers are always making their best work when they're passionate about the kinds of stories that they're telling. And that doesn't always match up with, working in the commercial world. And so this event does go hand in hand with a relatively new feature on Wonderful Machine's website called Unpublished, for which we've invited our members to share up to 10 images or GIFs from a personal project that hasn't yet been published or licensed. And we hope that that space will be a destination for clients to visit, to search through really a big library of our members' work that is available to use and to license, as well as giving clients a chance to get to know our members kind of on a deeper and more personal level by seeing the kinds of work that they're interested in shooting. So today we are speaking with 3 of our members, and I'm really excited to get into this. I feel like, with personal projects, there's no one kind of template or model to follow. They're all unique. They all have their own creative and technical demands. They are all can be considered for a different sort of audience. And I feel like if I was speaking with 100 photographers today instead of 3, each conversation would still be utterly unique. So I'm really interested and excited to dig into this. And David, I'd love to start with you, if that's okay.
Hey, Greg, if it's all right, I just wanted to jump in for a quick second just to talk about the structure, just so everybody has a heads up. So I'll be monitoring the chat. If anyone has questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to throw them into the chat. We'll do our best to get to them sort of in real time. And if we can't, we have about 15 minutes with each photographer. We'll also have about 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the program. So if there's questions that we haven't gotten to, we'll try and tackle those at the end. And we are recording this as well. Just wanted to let everybody know this will be up on our blog next week. All right, sorry, Greg, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Anna. A valuable point of order there. If I can introduce David. David Fonda is an award-winning architectural and interior photographer based in Philadelphia. He has background in editorial, corporate, industrial, and architectural work. And David's images revel in the interplay of light and structure, line and shape, tint and texture, making evident both his love of photography and architecture. David earned his BFA in photography from Ohio University and began his career as a photojournalist for 2 suburban Philadelphia daily newspapers. He's operated as an independent photography studio for more than 25 years. David, what was your favorite part of doing journalistic work?
Journalistic work? Just something different every day.
Yeah.
You know, just and get into so many different places. I've shot 5 presidents.
Wow.
At different times, and
don't let the Secret Service hear you saying that.
Right. And I've been in Graterford prison, and so just neat.
Amazing. Very cool. So I'm going to pull up your work. Let me do a screen share, and I'll have it right here in my browser. Can you all see my screen? Okay, cool. So what I'd like to do is just go through all of these images first without any commentary, and then we can circle back and talk about them.
Okay.
Okay. So David, do you want to give us a quick introduction to this work for us?
Sure. It's I just enjoy architecture, and as a discipline itself, and I enjoy architectural photography, and it's a way to kind of portray buildings more the way I see them, I guess, than where the client wants to see them necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, they're very beautiful pictures. I think that, I mean, your eye for form and for tonality is very sophisticated. And so what is the goal for this work, and what are you hoping to accomplish with this project?
The goal is really my own satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, I'd love to be able to sell it, of
Okay.
course. As far as a market, I'm not really sure what that would be. Perhaps architects to kind of show their buildings in a different light. Maybe something that they might hang in the office as art rather than put up on the website.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that actually would be a really great starting point to promoting this work. I could totally see this style of imagery being used to decorate architectural offices for sure. Another thing that comes to mind is actually like hotels. You know, there are art consultancies all over who kind of bring in work of artists and photographers and then push it out into like businesses like hotels or like, corporate offices, lobbies, things like that. So I feel like, that could possibly be an avenue for you as well.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
I haven't really, I just started doing this the end of last year.
mhm.
I was, work was slow, and I actually had some shots that I was frustrated with because I shot them on a poor day, on a flat day.
Yeah.
With the color, they were nothing. And I started converting them to black and white, and then took it to more extremes, and I really was able to get something out of it. Uh,
Hmm.
so,
And is this still in progress, or
oh
are you?
yeah,
It is. Okay. Um,
yeah,
okay, great. So a couple thoughts just on the overall edit and the scope of this project, because I actually think that there might be like multiple projects within this. Because there are different kind of visual strategies that you're using throughout. And you kind of teeter totter between moving more towards abstraction and
mm,
then pictures that work more towards being descriptive.
yep,
Um, and so I think as you go along, as you continue to produce more and more work, I think a good starting point would be to kind of start to try to separate the pictures into these different sorts of categories, and so that you don't have any work that seems like it's kind of out of place, because there are a couple in here, and let me go through. Um, so this one kind of stands out to me because you're kind of showing the whole building. It almost feels more kind of descriptive of the space and
mhm,
kind of documentary in a way. I mean, it's as beautiful and as rich as the others, but I feel like when you're getting into kind of the more creative perspectives and cropping, you're kind of venturing more towards into abstraction, where the picture becomes more about the formal arrangement and the tonal richness more than what the actual subject matter is. Does that make sense?
yeah. That building or those buildings in particular, that's New York State office buildings in Albany.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I thought they looked familiar. I know I've driven past them on the highway before.
And
Um,
they just seem to lend themselves to that kind of almost um, 50s-ish photography.
yeah.
The buildings aren't that old, but
Yeah, I mean they're incredible pieces of architecture.
mhm,
Um, but I think you hit on an interesting point. I think that there is kind of a kind of an older character to these kinds of pictures. You seem to chase after a very classical quality of image. Um, and for that, I think that there will always be a market for that kind of picture,
mhm,
even if it may be a little crowded. But I think there will always be opportunity for work like this within the marketplace. Um, and I think that if you ever decide to approach like curators or gallerists about this work, I think talking about some of your inspirations and talking about some of the kind of photographic traditions that you see yourself working within would be really valuable, and that's the kind of thing that curators and dealers want to hear, because they're not, in addition to trying to sell the work, they really want to understand the larger conversation that a body of work is participating in. And I feel like there's something very like modernist, like almost Ansel Adams, Paul Strand, Edward Weston, kind of that kind of character that your work embodies.
I'll have to dig back into my photo history.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That would be mainly in the 30s. The modernist photographers. There were actually competing factions of modernist photographers. There's Alfred Stieglitz and Paul Strand in New York, and then Ansel Adams and Edward Weston out west. And they were kind of working with the same philosophies, but at the same time, they were very different, and it was almost like a competition. It's really interesting. Um, so this is another picture that kind of stands out to me in a way where I feel like it doesn't quite belong.
Yeah,
What is this exactly? Are these cameras?
no, it's a light
Oh,
pole.
it is a light. Okay.
Yeah, it's almost a product shot.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. I mean, it's almost like it's like you photographed this in your studio. I mean, the light is so crisp and it's so well crafted. I mean, it's a beautiful picture, but it
Yeah,
plays a different kind of game, I
yeah.
think, than a picture like this, where it moves more into just the emphasizing the formal qualities of architecture. Um, and I also wonder if it matters where you make these. I mean, if are most of these made in Philadelphia, or are they kind of?
Yeah, there is, I think there could be some contextual interest in them. This photograph, that's
Mhm.
actually the Watergate Hotel.
Oh, interesting.
Um, yeah, I was reading up on it that Watergate burglars had dinner there, steak and lobster, before they
Huh.
went off and did their dirty work that night.
Yeah, and when you mention that, the picture changes completely. It becomes something else.
Yep,
So interesting how that can happen.
yep,
Um, so I think, in one respect, if you wanted to push this work further, you could consider like what the actual locations are. I think, for example, a project of architectural work that was all shot in Philadelphia would look different from a similar project made in Santa Fe. You know what I mean? And I think there is a level of conversation that could be had in terms of place, where the project could not only be about architecture, but maybe the history of that place, its kind of architectural identity, kind of the cultural aspects that might involve. You can really kind of go down the rabbit hole if you wanted to.
uh,
Um,
about 2 months ago, I went down to Washington for several days and shot down there. That's what this Watergate is from.
mm,
Thinking that maybe I shot the Washington, or the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial and the Capitol Building, and thinking if I could get some known pieces of architecture, my own take on them, if that might be more marketable.
yeah, I think it could be. I could imagine you making like a DC portfolio, a Philadelphia portfolio, and then using that to kind of market locally within those areas where that depictions of that place would be the most marketable. I think that could be a good path forward for you.
Yeah. Well, the problem is getting an interesting picture of a 500-foot pole, Washington Monument.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine your options would be limited when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Um, did you have any other immediate questions that you had for me, or any?
No,
Okay.
I'm really still just developing this as a style and trying to get together a body of work, and then um, see where to go from it. It's a very tedious process, and I'm hoping
Hmm.
to find some ways to um, speed along a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the good thing is that I think within all of this work, there's a very clear vision of what you're looking to do, and you're executing that very consistently.
Hmm.
Um, to me, the way that I see this is that it's at a point where you just continue to develop material, and then the more pictures that you have to start with, the tighter and the stronger the edit that you can create. I always use Robert Frank's book, The Americans, as an example, because it contained, I think, about 80 photographs. And most photographers know it as one of the most famous photo books ever made. And those 80 photographs were edited from over 30,000 pictures that he shot over the course of 2 years. And to have all of that material to winnow down from, it really gave him a lot of latitude to find the pictures that sung together with the most harmony. And the result was, again, like one of the greatest photo books, of the last century. So I think just continuing to develop material, and as you do, different kind of thematic threads will begin to reveal themselves in terms of, what I mentioned earlier, like the kind of balance between abstraction and description. You'll start to recognize pictures that don't quite fit in with the rest. And you just kind of go from there until you get to a point where, again, all the pictures just sing together very clearly in harmony, and there isn't any one that feels like it doesn't belong.
Yeah. Okay. I thought I'd mention, you guys must have sent out an email on that it included some of my work. I got, in the last few days, I've gotten a couple of hits directly from that email.
Oh, fantastic. That's
good to
awesome.
hear.
We love hearing that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
thanks for letting us know.
Yep.
Well, thank you, David, for joining. Thank you, Greg. All right, so next up, Tiffany. Greg, do you want to go ahead and?
Yes. Hi, Tiffany. How are you?
Greg, good to meet you. Good to
Great to meet you too. Let me introduce you properly. For everyone who doesn't know, Tiffany Long is a commercial lifestyle and editorial photographer with roots in family photojournalism. Her work serves brands aspiring to help people collect moments rather than things, including experiential activities, education, minimalistic living, and visual ethnographies. Her work is the thoughtful internalization of subjects' perspectives to reflect back to them the stories they'll need later. And she takes an anthropological participant observer approach to create storytelling photographs that feel alive. I love that. I love it. She lives in Alhambra, California with her husband, son, and daughter. And, I was going through your website and I saw that you shot for Ben & Jerry's before.
Yes.
What was that like? Did they give you free ice cream?
Well, they expensed the ice cream, but they were like, can you go buy the ice cream and we'll pay you back instead of, frozen ice cream to you. And forgive me if my internet goes out, because sometimes it's a little spotty. We think it's squirrels, but we don't know yet. So
No worries.
okay. So for me, Greg has disappeared, but I can still hear you.
Oh, okay. We can hear you.
Okay, great. But Ben & Jerry's was my very first commercial shoot. And the agency found me on Thumbtack, which I no longer use, but it was a good experience.
Awesome. Very cool. So I want to show you have a multimedia piece that you're looking to pitch to clients. And so I'm going to share my screen again.
Okay.
It's about 6 minutes long, right? 5
Yes,
6 minutes?
that's right. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to show the first 3 minutes,
Okay.
just to make sure we have enough time to go through everything after. But for everyone who wants to see the full piece, Honor can drop the link into the chat and you guys can check it out later. Okay, so yeah, so we'll do the first 3 minutes and then we'll discuss.
When I was in the 6th grade, I had to write a Where I'm From poem. I wrote that I was from the billowing steam of a Chinese wok and the boba shops on Valley Boulevard, the oldest of 3 daughters. I didn't write that I came from an emotionally and verbally abusive home, from parents who conflated love through the loudness of their rage. They didn't know how to manage the trauma they inherited from their own parents. Cardinal rule number 1 of the Chinese family: always save face. I promise this is a story that honors my parents. This is a story about the slow and unsteady path toward reconciliation.
My mom doesn't talk to me. I can count the number of times that my dad did talk to me.
Both my parents describe their difficult childhoods in the present tense. Perhaps it's because they have kept the pain so close by.
You hear so much negative in your life that when you do something positive, you feel good about it. Then somebody says something like, why is it about you? You suppress your emotions.
I am in a bird cage that I never knew the door is not locked.
My parents never felt parented. Then they had a family of their own. They both offered self-reflections. What time in your life would you want to relive?
When you guys were little,
Why?
to redo some of the mistake I've done. Basically, trying to be a better mother.
Yes, I provided. When it comes to family life, they didn't have the relationship like most parents I see now. And it bothers me.
Can people change? And when they do, can the static narrative I've held onto about my parents change?
I usually see mom and their daughters have a close relationship, and I long for it. I still would like to have a close relationship because the disconnect has been there for many years. I don't know how to fix it. So what do you think?
Well, I think it starts here. Conversations like this. And your willingness to let me be here and tape you and photograph you. That's a lot to allow someone to do.
I don't have any reason not to. You're my kid.
They are also human. They're echoes of, I never learned to be a parent, no longer feel like excuses. They are cries for empathy. My parents became grandparents. Softer around the edges, they nurture my kids and smother them with affirmation.
Okay.
Okay.
Such a beautiful piece. It almost brings me to tears at some points. It's so beautifully made, and I think it's really like the music that gets to me.
No, thanks.
So, do you want to tell us? Let me stop my screen share. Do you want to tell us a little about the work and what kind of prompted you to produce that?
Sure. What I really wanted to do in the beginning was be able to tell my grandparents' immigration story. And so I ended up taking a workshop in multimedia storytelling because I really wanted to just get it done. I felt like time wasn't on my side anymore. Like my grandparents are 99 and 100 years old, but now they're both in nursing homes and now I don't have access to really either of them. But I still needed subjects to finish my workshop. And really, like, one of my main questions when doing the project was really, what does it mean to be a Chinese person growing up in America? And as a third generation Chinese person, like, the cultural link for me was through my grandparents. And so I think I was trying to explore also like why Chinese culture wasn't so ingrained in us like when we were growing up. And so as I was interviewing my parents, and a lot of stuff came out that I saw was just the result of intergenerational trauma. Like people just never really learned how to be whole people. Like my grandparents like had to deal with like escaping from war and just living through like really difficult times and then transitioning into like coming to America. And then my parents never really got a full sense of like having a full childhood or just having a good sense of like what strong parenting. And then, they had us. And now that I have kids, I'm just kind of like, well, what am I really passing on to my children? And I also was feeling like it was time for a personal project because like every time I would get a client inquiry, I would read it and I would be like, oh, I don't care. It's just like, it's really hard to care about someone else's product when I felt like I had such strong convictions to do honor to my family that I never really finished this family project that I had set out to do like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And also like when my kids are like, you know, pulling on me as I'm editing photos of other happy families, I was like, okay, something's got to give. I really need to like take a break from client work and just do something for my family. So that's how this
Amazing.
project came about. Yeah.
Amazing. And so now, so it is complete, right? You're done working on it?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So that chapter is done. I think there's still a prequel and I think there's a sequel.
Okay.
So the sequel I'm working on right now, is called Handmade Heritage, and it's about how like families are the vehicles for traditions to pass down through. And also, like as I was doing research on intergenerational trauma, sociologists had said that the antidote to the trauma is to really dig into your roots and kind of like know who you are. And so that's like the sequel. So the prequel is like if I get to go back to China and visit like my grandparents' ancestral home, that would be the prequel to like this whole
Mhm.
story.
Oh, that sounds amazing. It seems like an incredible trilogy. Okay, so with this work now, so what are your goals for it? You told me that you were trying to pitch it out to
Mhm.
platforms to pick it up, and how has that been going?
So I pitched to 60 people and you know, two people were like, oh, we'll share it with the team. And then one person was like, oh, you have the wrong desk. And
Yeah,
that's kind of like where it's ended. So I'm like, I don't know that I have, you know, I don't know that I'm in the right space for it. Um,
yeah.
yeah, and I don't know if it's more of like, you know, if I should try to kind of push into like the museum world, you know, because it is like a photo project and it is a multimedia project. But then
Yeah.
I also don't know if it's good enough in the sense that like I think as a body of work, it makes sense in the multimedia piece. But when trying to pull out like individual images, I'm like, I don't know if it's strong enough to like really
Mhm.
be, you know, a gallery with captions.
Yeah.
So all in all, I don't really have a direction for it. It might just be a thing that I try to use as an intro to clients. Like if they happen to land on it and it resonates with them, then they might think, oh, I just really want to get to know Tiffany. I want her to do some work for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a beautiful piece, and I think that if persist with it and continue, you will
Mhm.
find someone who will pick it up. I don't have any doubt about it. And I do think, in terms of like more towards like the fine art world, I could see you showing this at photo festivals and things like that. I mean, there are uh, plenty in the U.S. like Filter Photo in Chicago, Photo Fest in Houston,
Mm,
um, the New York one. There's one in Portland.
mm,
And then there are several dozen probably throughout Europe. So there are a lot of targets there that I think would be, have good potential.
okay.
Um, but editorially, like, one thing popped into my mind, the first time I watched that, which was NPR. I think it would be
Mm,
a perfect fit for NPR. I mean, if you close your eyes and just listen to it, you'd think you're listening to an NPR story.
mhm.
Um, have you tried pitching to them?
I don't think I have any contacts there. I think I
Okay.
found one person's email, but maybe I can try harder there.
Okay. Well, that's something that we can help with too if you ever want. But I mean, NPR, and if you mentioned that you didn't think the project worked that great with just the photographs, right? Because I was going to suggest maybe you could pitch the video, but also like just a photo essay of it with your
Mhm,
text, or maybe for the radio, maybe it could be just an audio piece. I mean, it seems
mhm,
like it has versatility across different kinds of platforms.
mm,
Um, and I think with the kind of story that it is,
mhm,
I don't think the photographs necessarily need to kind of bear the whole brunt of the storytelling. If you're concerned
okay.
about the quality and strength of them, I think there's enough context and like just emotional power to the
Mm,
project that I think it's okay to just have the photographs be what they are as long as they're included within the context of the story.
mhm.
Um,
That's helpful. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, NPR, I think you should definitely get a hold of. I mean, I think of New York Times, I think of, I don't, maybe The Guardian or The Atlantic.
Mhm.
Um, I think maybe you could reach out to like cultural organizations,
Yeah.
maybe related to Chinese Americans, maybe
Yeah.
related to immigration advocacy or family
Mhm.
support for immigrants, so
That's good.
foundations, not-for-profits,
Yeah.
always looking for great content.
Mm.
I mean, I think it has enormous potential.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. And I think another hang up I have about that is like, I don't really know how to ask for, in my pitches, I'm just kind of like, let me know if you're interested and, but it's also like, I don't really know what happens after that. Like, do they license it? Does it, how do I get paid for this? I don't really know that next step.
Right, and no two places are exactly alike. If you get to that stage of conversation, that's where you reach out to friends who've done similar things to get advice on, if the deal that they're offering you seems fair or not.
Yeah.
We also consult in that area with negotiations and contracts and things like that,
Mhm.
making sure that photographers get fair wage for their work.
Mhm.
Um, when it comes to your pitching, are you doing it just via email, just reaching out directly to people?
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah. And I wonder if my pitches were too text heavy. Like I introduced the project and I included the link. And I also said that I presented it one time at an artist roundtable at a museum in Florida.
Mhm.
Um, and then just kind of like left it at that. But I didn't include any visual components, like hoping
Okay.
that they would just go to the link.
Yeah, I would definitely include some kind of visual. Maybe it's, I don't know who, I mean, probably not just JPEGs because the experience is so much more than that. I mean, maybe there's a little PDF presentation you could include.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
I think just sending links, has the potential to scare some people off just because of
Mhm.
so many, like, hackers and all of these,
Yeah.
nefarious things happening in our internet world now.
Sure.
Um, and I think giving them an immediate visual will give them a reason to want to dig in a little more. Like that's what will pique their curiosity, I
Okay.
think, is seeing the actual content.
Okay.
Um, but when it
Yeah.
comes to doing pitches, I think the biggest thing is to know who you're pitching to and have give them a sense of why you're pitching to them directly. Maybe
Mm.
you talk about why you think their platform would be a great fit for this, or maybe you talk about you know their audience and how you think your work might resonate with the audience and why you think
Mm.
your story is important to tell.
Okay.
Um, you could also pull up kind of similar minded articles or pieces that they've published in the past and make reference to them to kind of demonstrate, how your work fits within their editorial scope.
Mhm.
Um, and then just providing, a paragraph synopsis about the project, about your inspirations for it, and how you hope that audiences will kind of receive it, and what you hope that it will mean to the readership of the platforms that you're pitching to.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks.
For sure. And again, and this isn't any sales pitch or anything, but doing pitches and helping to craft outreach emails and things are specialties that we do at Wonderful Machine too. So if any of you guys ever need help with that aspect of your marketing cycle, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, Greg. This is Honor. I was just going to jump in to say, I think you covered this very much already, Greg, but it really is, I think, Tiffany, about shaping each outreach email to that specific client. I think sometimes photographers hope they can have sort of one general introduction to a project, but I think that the more time you spend writing that email specifically to address the particular client or publication or foundation that you're reaching out to, I think that resonates. And it's such deeply personal work that I think it's okay to come from that very personal place when you do your outreach.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. It's so helpful. Thank
Can I ask a question too, Tiffany?
Sure, Brian.
I'm wondering if is this a part one of an ongoing series?
Sure, if I get the other pieces together, but I was hoping this one would stand alone, just so that I don't have pressure to like make more stuff after this one.
Mm-hmm. So I watched this one a couple times, and I got the underlying title and content of this one as joy.
Mhm.
And I think in your pitching too, it's going to have so much more power if all of a sudden you had 3 or 4 or 6 of these made with,
Mhm.
capturing your family over a certain period of time.
Mhm.
I think that would make it a lot easier to present to potential outlets and or clients, say, look, I have all this work ready to go. And then
Mhm.
also, speak more about what Honor was talking about. Let whoever you're talking to, whoever you're pitching to, let them know exactly what you want. If it's
Mhm.
NPR and you just want them to put it on your blogs and no money changes hands and you just want the promotion, let NPR know that. If you're pitching to a healthcare company and you want them to throw their logo at the end and pay you 100 grand, let them know that too. You
Okay.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just be, a lot of clients they're really busy, and yeah, like
Mhm.
they react well to pretty pictures, like a JPEG in an email, something they can
Mhm.
click on, and then you letting them know exactly what you made and what your hopes are in reaching out to them.
Yeah, that makes sense because I think maybe it was too open-ended and they had to mentally figure out a place for it, and then that's like too tiring when they have too many things to do. So yeah.
Yeah, well, and Greg and I were, discussing this piece a little bit this morning, and that too, and in that, like, I think the open-endedness is fine. That's great. It's great to have the viewers have a different, different opinions. You're not trying to tell people what to feel, but in that case, it could be for like a non-for-profit, just social awareness thing like NPR or AARP or some, something that comes up on like an in-flight TV channel, or it could be, a San Francisco giant healthcare company ad at the end, and then all of a sudden this is a 30-second spot on, the Super Bowl or whatever. All of those I think are totally viable options for this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I would also add too that if you're looking for a means to produce the next 2 parts of this, if you really want to go after that,
Mhm.
this piece could be a really good asset when it comes to applying for grants.
Mhm.
If you wanted to go that route, because it can kind of demonstrate exactly what you want to do and just basically say, I want to do 2 more of these videos.
Mhm.
And that, it doesn't leave anything to the imagination, and with, the grand jury trying to figure out, what this person is going to do with the money, they can already see what you're
Yeah.
capable of.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you so
Cool.
much, Tiffany. That was just really powerful work. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thanks for all your feedback, everyone.
Cool. Okay. So Duncan is our third and final photographer today that we'll be speaking with. Let me give you the proper introduction. Duncan Elliott grew up by the coast in rural Dorset, England, and some of his earliest memories are loading film into a camera, taking photographs of cliffs in the sea, and pleading with his parents to develop yet another roll of film. In college, he played in various bands, and it was then that he started photographing other bands in the local scene, beginning to shoot promo work and developing a desire to learn about lighting. Duncan has developed a love for telling stories about people who are passionate and dedicated about what they do, and he approaches each shoot with a blank slate. So welcome, Duncan. What kind of music did you play in college? What kind of bands were you in?
Not very good ones. It was like just any band that would have like a not very good bassist.
Okay.
And I kind of knew 4 notes, and that was enough for most. Every time we did a jam, it would generally just turn to me just playing my bass too loud, and then everyone just playing whatever I was playing. So
it sounds like a lot of fun to me.
it was good. I've actually just started taking it back up in lockdown as well. So I actually know more now in 6 months of playing bass through lockdown time than 5 years playing it at college and stuff.
Very cool. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to do a screen share again, and then I'm going to bring up your work. And the bulk of this project is already on your website. Is that correct?
Yeah, because it's a kind of work in progress thing, but there's been so many good shots from it so far that I didn't want to not have it on there. If any prospective clients come along and looking so good that I think it's good to have it there, even though it's not finished, and it will change over time. So that's why it's on there at the moment. But there's, I think, as I shared with you, there's kind of the last visit was some the changing of the farm whilst I've been there is quite dramatic. So
Okay.
Sorry, just to jump in, Greg, we can't see if you're sharing your screen. We're just seeing black right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, that's the project. It's just black.
Avant-garde, love it.
It's different shades.
We've entered the void.
Of hops farming at the end of the world. Okay. Is this better? Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we're good.
Okay,
Thank you.
fantastic. Okay, so this is Duncan's project, A Hop Farms Year. And so let me just go through the images quickly first without any commentary, and then we can dig in. And let me see. Okay. Let me do this. Oh, okay, hold on. Let me figure out the proper web browsers these days are so fidgety, you know. Okay. Okay, so Duncan, do you want to tell us a little about this project and how you got started with it?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, this is a project about how hop farms, well, it's kind of a hop farms year. So starting from spring and then we'll end at just after harvest time. And going to visited the farm 4 times so far, and have another 2 or 3 times to visit to go. And they've grown from nothing basically to they grow 18 feet high. Yeah, it's quite like at the start, it's very intensive. There's one guy he's done 300 miles of string, just going up and down and up and down. And that's kind of like the big bit. And then the rest of the time is a lot of growing. So as mainly an environmental portrait photographer, there's been a lot of detail shots. So as the project's gone on, I've tried to find someone who's just hanging around the farm. And so the last visit we got the farm manager, and he's standing in front of 18 feet tall rows of hops now. So all this behind this guy, this is now completely full of it goes straight from the bottom to the top.
Okay, cool. And so you photographed on this farm 4 times?
It's 4 times so far, yeah.
Okay. And do you have kind of an end in sight, or is this something that you'll just kind of continue to shoot throughout the year?
No, so they harvest from the 31st of August. That's when they start harvesting. Generally, it's a bank holiday in Britain, so we have the day off then. So they usually start harvesting on that date, and then it lasts for about 4 weeks. So I'll visit 2 or 3 times during that time. Because there's a lot to do during the harvest. They've got to cut down the vines, and then there's a whole huge process about that as well. So it's been good. It's been really good to do.
Very cool. And so what kind of questions do you have, you know, to push this work forward or get it to kind of a conclusion? Right?
So part of it's kind of like editing. You know, I won't be able to finish the edit until it's all done. So that's kind of the interesting thing now, is it's just a work in progress, you know. So it's kind of there's a narrative to tell, and you know, this kind of web page is kind of part of that. But then once it's finished, it's about putting it into something clear and concise that can appeal to prospective clients, and then putting it out there in whatever way possible, which I have a few ideas for. But yeah.
Okay. So you know, we were looking through this earlier this morning, and something kind of jumped out at us, where, you know, the title of this is a hop farms year,
Yeah.
But with the images, the consistency of the light and the color is so strong. It almost feels like these were shot within the scope of a week rather than a year. So there's a bit of a disconnect in terms of like what the title kind of promises, what the work is about, and what the pictures actually show.
Mhm.
And so you know, and since you're still shooting this, I mean, it seems like this kind of work has, you know, a lot of potential to expand. You know, both in terms of like time scale, like, you know, what do these farmers do like off season when they're not harvesting? Like what comes in the middle of all that? Like what is their winter? Um, or like, you know, from kind of the beginning of planting these, like what does the end product look like? What does the packaging look like? Um,
Yeah, so that's a lot of that comes up with like the next bit, the harvest bit, and also the images that I think I sent you, that the other extra ones, like the kind of
mm,
the third part of this. So yeah, there's a lot of that. That's very true. And also it's never rained every time I've gone down, which has been a bit annoying.
oh, interesting.
But
Yeah.
that. And as well with the extra photos I've sent, because there is then that stages of that you've got you've nothing to this, to the next height, to the next height.
Right.
Then does get a bit more prescriptive.
Yeah, I think if you're thinking of this in terms of a series and an edit, that could be actually a really interesting structure, is to kind of show the plants, and as the viewer goes through the project, you know, they could visually see the plants getting larger and larger until the end where they're kind of totally full.
Yeah.
You know, that could be one potential idea. Um, the other thing I'm curious about is, you know, I'm seeing these people, these farmers, but you know, and I can see them, but I don't know anything about them. I'm so curious to know their names or to hear their stories, or for pictures like this to know exactly just what this activity is or what these objects are for. So I think, you know, if you wanted to kind of enrich the story in that way, I think using captions to kind of fill out some of that context could be a really valuable way to add kind of depth to the storytelling. I don't know if you've ever used captions in your previous work, but have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, not. I haven't done it on any of my kind of on a website. Obviously, if you're showing this as a kind of as a project to clients, you might be talking through things. So, but yeah,
Right.
or you know, showing it online to people, like during online kind of portfolio reviews or talks, it's kind of that opportunity arises. But putting it in as a caption is yeah, it could work well. Yeah.
Like I'm seeing this guy and I'm just so eager to know what his name is to start, because I think even that would help to kind of boost my emotional engagement and just feel a little more connected with him. So to the extent that he's no longer a stranger, I think. Um,
Greg, I just wanted to jump in with a question. If you had thoughts about sharing projects that are sort of in progress versus waiting till, you know, a project has completely wrapped, sort of the pros and cons of the two.
Yeah, I mean, I typically advise photographers to wait until the project is done to present it. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is that, you know, with you know, being in the middle of a project, you never know, you know, what about that project might change. You know, it could be like stylistically with your work, or kind of the narrative of the subject itself can change. I mean, what if there's a big fire or a flood or something in this hops farm? Like, what does that do to your approach to making this project, and how does it change? And I also think that I think it's pretty natural for all photographer projects where, you know, in general, the longer you work on a project, typically the better that it gets. And so I think to show kind of work in progress on your website, kind of having that in mind, like it's inevitable that a better version of this work will eventually manifest. And I don't think that I think you have to be careful about clients seeing work in progress when you know that it's not the best possible presentation of that project yet. Because oftentimes clients might give you 20 minutes of attention, once a year or something, and you want to make sure that you use all of that attention to full effect, and not to be too American and use war metaphors and things, but you never want to go into battle with your gun half loaded. So I think being able to create a first impression with any client is really important. And if that first impression isn't the best possible impression you can create, then you're putting yourself at a disadvantage, I think. But at the same time, I think, it's really evident to me that these are really gorgeous photographs too. and so even without that, even if you're looking to kind of, impress clients just on, your technical ability and your storytelling ability from picture to picture, if they want to hire you just to make a portrait for a magazine cover or something, there's material in here that would probably give them the confidence to hire you. So it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah. I guess some of it circles back to what you had said, Greg, about the frame. How is it being framed too? Is this the year, or is this a chapter in something that, like, if you're going to share it before it's a fully realized project, framing it as such, as a piece of something that's still going to be brought together in another format. I guess it's sort of something I think we've hit on with almost everyone's work, making certain things explicit, like clients or the people who you guys are all very, very close to your work, but just to make it as succinct and clear what you're sharing and why, when you do get this work out there into the world.
Yeah, and that is another thing I wanted to mention, because you're presenting this as a project on your website, but there's also no description that I saw. So I think just including a short statement, maybe similar to what you had sent me about your inspiration for this project and why you wanted to photograph on this farm, and what is it about hops in particular that interests you, maybe its relationship to agriculture or the economy, or just people who like to drink a lot of beer. Just a little bit of context that could add kind of some depth, which would help to answer the question that will come up in any client's mind, which is, why should I care? Or like, what's the so what of this project? So using text to kind of answer that right off the bat will kind of put audiences at ease, and they can just kind of enjoy the storytelling, I think.
Thank you. Well, we are getting close to 3:00. We do have a few more minutes. Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you, Tiffany, Duncan, and David for being here and sharing your work. It's really fun, but would love to stick around for a few minutes if anyone has questions more broadly about self-assigned projects. We're happy.
Or if anyone has any questions for any of the photographers.
Yeah, great point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Duncan, I have a question. Who are some of your recent clients, or who do you hope to be in something in line with that Hops project?
Yeah, it's certainly in line with that project. Definitely, or anybody in the agricultural industry, really, especially with someone who takes pride in what they produce. I think that's the kind of, because that's then an interest of mine, if it's kind of like they're proud of making something and it is of good quality, then it's going to be a good story. It's kind of like finding someone who wants you to do something very similar to that, is kind of the dream, really, with any client or brand. But yeah, certainly, someone who would see that and then say, let's do that. So whether that's anybody who's making a food or drinks product for the market, I think would be ideal. So I have started creating a list of advertising agencies who work with certain brands, food and drink brands. That's kind of once the project's finished, then I'll be doing, a general email out, and then a more targeted one, possibly with a book and a bit of presentation with that, to send out to people.
That's great. I think in the beginning, when we started looking at the work, you mentioned something tongue-in-cheek about there being a lot of detail shots versus what you normally do. But I think I think that is in line with the clients you're talking about, like someone who's talking about product, or if it's a beer brand, they want to see the hops. They may care they may want one photo of the land and the vista, and then more about what they're actually growing and why that's different than their competitors. So you're showing those details. I think that's great. And Greg wanted to know that farmer's name and his story, and I think that can be important to specific clients as well. Who are these employees we have, and what is the story behind them? Where do we find it from? Do they have a rich history? Have they been with other brands? Is this their land that we're leasing, or they work for us? Like, what is their stories, and all those people, I think it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really, and it's funny because there's actually, there's like one full-time member of staff on that farm, and the rest of it is seasonal workers. And obviously there's an entire kind of Brexit thing we've got going on with that as well. So the harvest is going to be quite a lot of different work. There's going to be that part of the narrative to finish about the hop getting harvested, and then, but there's also going to be, I almost see it as a complete kind of segue into these seasonal workers that have come over, and they used to be in one part of Europe, and they're now getting people from another part of Europe because of Brexit. So there's a kind of whole other project that might kind of stem from that part.
Or would you say like you following these farmers and their departure?
That might be tricky in itself, but just kind of so the answer to the question about the guy what's his name? His name's Yurik, and he's come over to that farm for the last 25 years, apparently, doing the same job in spring. And then he's kind of the head guy during the harvest, and he works in the hop room, drying them all out, and then he's in charge of all that. And he brings his kind of village over with him every September. So there is a whole aspect of that, like this community coming over, and I kind of I have it in my mind to do a kind of side project to it at that point. So yeah,
I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, we've also been filming it as well all the way through. So
oh, fantastic.
Multiple things, yeah.
There's a
that
couple...
sort of ties into, I'm sorry.
Oh no, go on.
That sort of ties into one of the questions I was going to ask is, how do you know, and I'm sorry, I had to miss I had a client call. I had to miss, I'm sorry if we went over this already.
Welcome back.
How do you know when it's done, and how much do you tie in all these sort of related pieces? So, when do you know it's ready to get out the door? Do you tell people that there's more to come? Do you keep them all separate? Like, how much overlap is there, or do you treat them as sort of completely separate things?
Yeah, I think we touched on it a little bit. Do you want to take that, Greg? You feel?
I mean, it's always hard to know when a project is done. I think the most important thing is compiling really as much material as you can, and to not be too deterministic about what the project should be. At least in my experience, I feel like if you put a project into a box too early, then you kind of stifle yourself, in your natural evolution as a creator. And so I think, with any new project, it's good just to have some space to play and experiment and try different things, try different results. And the further you go, the kind of narrower and narrower it can become, as you approach the final kind of presentation, whatever it might be. But when to know when it's done, I don't know. That's a hard question.
It's a super hard question, and every project's different, and you don't want to get stuck, right? Like, I think it's the most important thing is to keep moving forward. But sometimes it takes I don't know, I feel like as a photo editor, you know, sometimes it takes going through some version of a presentation to figure out just how far along you are, like whether it's a little web gallery or a PDF or, you know, a slideshow, because sometimes you don't know until you pull it together just how much or how little you have.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of it is just getting it to a point where you feel like you're satisfied with the work and you're proud of it. And I think that also, you know, an important thing to do would be to share that work with a lot of people that you trust to get a lot of feedback, you know, many sets of eyes on it. Because if you're just working in a vacuum and you're not, you know, getting feedback or advice from anybody else, you know, the ideas that you think were great, you know, once it goes out into the world, maybe, you know, there's something different you could have done that, you know, you never really know. So, I mean, the important thing is that you get a project to a point where you feel like you can be proud of it. And sometimes that can happen quickly. Sometimes it can take years. And a lot of it depends on the nature of the project too, and how complicated of a story that you're trying to tell.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. If there's a story, is the whole story there? If it's not about a story, you know, and it's something more abstract, like some David's work, it's a slightly different conversation than Tiffany and Duncan, you know, where there's very clearly a narrative, then you really need to tell that whole story in as much depth as possible.
But I would also say take your time, because what's most important is that you get to a result that is just really, really solid. And sometimes that can take a lot of time to reach that. If you put out anything too soon or too early, you know, it could end up, you know, coming back to bite you.
We also, you know, are reachable by email. If anyone has questions for any of us here at Wonderful Machine, you know, please don't hesitate to reach out. So feel free to just give a shout right now if there's anything pressing. But I want to, for anyone who needs to go, want to say thank you so much for being here. I thank you for showing up for these member open houses. It's really, I think, just a great opportunity for us to connect with you guys. So really appreciate you all being here.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Have a good afternoon. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.